Welcome to the Bible Forum. This is Warren Sprouse. I'm your host and your guide for the next 2 hours. Sometimes we go a little longer. It depends on the material. It depends on me and how I feel on throat. I've been choir practice at 5 o'clock and singing in church and all of that, and I'm not quite sure how this is all going to work out for my voice. It feels pretty good right now. I got my water. I think I'm ready to go. We are broadcasting here on Ustream.tv and by faith we're also doing it on Facebook. Facebook is where I want to go. I want to be able to do that with aplomb and just, and maybe not do it on Ustream anymore. It costs money for Ustream. This is June 11th, 2017. Lots of stuff have been happening while you were off going to work, asleep, eating, whatever it was you were doing in the last 168 hours. We've got, 18 or 20 things we want to talk about. You got the email in your inbox this week, and it tells you the things that we are going to be talking about. But for those of you who are tuning in and don't get the email, shame on you. You should get the email. Send me an email. Send it to me here at the Bible Forum. The Bible Forum at gmail.com. And I'll have your email address, and then I'll send you one next week. There have been new terror attacks around the world. Iran, oddly enough, you just can't beat these people. Anti-Sharia rallies everywhere, violence and all the rest of it. Bernie Sanders got red in the face this week. We'll talk about that. There's some news abroad that this year in September, the sun is going to stand still again, just like it did in the days of, who was it? Went right out of my mind. Anyway, back in the Old Testament, the guy that followed Moses, I got brain freeze here. Too much stuff going on. I think that's probably what it amounts to. We're going to look at where regular churchgoers live. Some of the things having to do with Turkey and the refugees, those kinds of things that are going on there. Canada and their progressive insanity that they're trying to bring over here. We're going to look at what passes for Christianity in America today. Pentecostal church in Florida. And the pastor married a 13-year-old girl to a 20-year-old man. And that was after she'd already had a baby. Can't picture myself as a pastor getting involved like that. Can you? I don't know. We talked last week a little bit about the summer Reformation or Reformation summer. I'm going to go back and revisit that a little bit. They got a robot priest there. Yeah, robot priest. You can just see it now. It's coming. Christianity and all of its glory and all of its permutations coming unglued. We're also going to look at Islam. Islam is in the news all the time, and something came up, and I can't remember what it was, but it's triggered my mind. We haven't talked about it for a while. But they talk about Islam as another faith system, like Christianity or like Judaism. It's not. Judaism isn't a faith system either, but Christianity is. Islam is definitely not a faith system. But neither is popular Christianity today. We're going to look at some of that. Beth Moore's in the news again. She's listening for God and abandoning reality. And then we're going to look at some bibliology, proof that the Bible is actually accurate. We're going to look at some of that as we get down through the list. Tuesday of this past week, there had already been 2 terrorist attacks in European cities, one in London and one in Paris. Both of them by Islamic terrorists intent on making a statement. And still, We have politicians throughout the Western world who continue to plea on behalf of the terrorists, claiming that these people are really peace-loving people and that the Anglo-European religion and social structure is really what the problems are. Have you considered? There is no promise of anything like a biblical heaven in Islam. Unless, of course, you're a man and you die in defense of the faith, and then you get your, 39 virgins or whatever. But there isn't anything like Christianity and what it represents in the doctrines and the principles of Islam. So forget the so-called fact that Islam is a faith. It's not a faith. It's a works righteousness system. Forget the fact that many of the tenets of Islam are immoral. They have the freedom to rape women, genital mutilation. They can beat women for minor, they can beat other people too, but they can beat women. They can cut off the right hand of a thief. They can throw homosexuals off of the mountains or out of a 10-story window. I mean, this is not a moral system of religion. They have no Savior. They have no gospel. They have no imputed righteousness. When their Mahdi does eventually show up, and there's a debate as to which one it might be, it'll be to kill off all non-Muslims and establish the highly valued global caliphate, something they see Jesus will help them do. So expect more terrorist attacks, especially from young, radicalized, and ignorant men, and in some cases women. Works for them. Bridget Gabriel, well-known activist, anti-Sharia advocate, has organized what she's calling anti-Sharia rallies in 28 cities around 20 states. These were supposed to take place yesterday. Well-known and respected president of the Center for Pluralism, a fellow by the name of Mike Gause, Ghouse, is an American Muslim who emigrated from India to the United States 30 years ago. And he thinks that this whole thing is a waste of time. He says no Muslim in America really wants the type of Sharia that we see in the Middle East. He's referring to what the media calls radical Shia, the kind that cuts people's heads off for disrespecting Allah. Of course, a survey conducted 2 years ago found that between 25 and 40% of American Muslims did want this type of Sharia. Who knew? Phil Haney, former screening officer for the Department of Homeland Security and an Arabic speaker, said Gause wouldn't survive in an Islamic country. He would be quickly accused of blasphemy and he would have his head cut off. A Muslim, but he's not Muslim enough. Meanwhile, in the Senate conference room this week, current Senator and former candidate for President of the United States, Bernie Sanders, literally turned red in the face and screamed at President Trump's nominee for Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Over? No, not the labor fiduciary law, which he excoriated Mulvaney for 2 years ago, but over the Bible. What is the Bible doing in a Senate hearing over money, budget, management? Not sure what an atheist socialist like Bernie Sanders knows about the Bible, but it didn't stop him from getting red in the face and screaming at this cabinet candidate. It was all over the cardinal doctrine of biblical Christianity. Yeah. Sanders says, do you mean to tell me that unless a person is a Christian, that they're going to go to hell? And before the man could even answer, he said, "That's anti-American. That's outrageous." Why? Well, because it condemns non-Christians, condemns Jews, condemns atheists, Muslims to divine judgment. Well, yeah, that's the whole point. This is not a sectarian battle among all the different religious groups. This is a battle between what God says is salvation, what is godly and good, and everything else. And they're all in the same pot. In other news that's really not news, we have proof that the Bible is accurate. Israeli scientists have found evidence that confirms the biblical account of the sun standing still in Joshua chapter 10, according to Charisma News. Joshua 10 recounts the story of Joshua and the Israelites' battle against the Amorites at Gibeon. And it says, quote, "On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, 'Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Aijalon.' So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as it is written in the book of Jashar." In Joshua chapter 10, it says the sun stopped in the middle of the sky, delayed going down about a full day. There was never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Now scientists have determined that this event describes a total solar eclipse. Analyzing data from NASA showed that there was indeed a total solar eclipse in the region between 1500 and 1000 BC. Scientists were even able to pinpoint the exact date and time when this event took place. They say it was October 30th, 1207 BC at 4:28 in the PM. And now we're being told there's going to be a solar eclipse, something of that nature, this fall. I'm going to do it again. What's the message here? Weren't no miracle. It was just a natural order of things. We'll see if it works the same as it did for Joshua. Where do most regular churchgoers live in the United States? Can you say the Bible Belt? You knew that. A recent Barna Group survey found that Chattanooga, Tennessee tops the list. After Chattanooga comes Salt Lake City, Utah, Augusta, Georgia, Baton Rouge, the Red Stick, Louisiana, and then after that it's a tie between Birmingham, Anniston, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The study also revealed that 4 in 10 Americans are active church goers. A news report indicated additionally that the study revealed the cities with the lowest number of regular church attendees. We could have a little contest and you would get them right, I'm sure. The least regular church attenders? San Francisco, Oakland, California, San Jose, California. What's this with California? This is not the first time that Chattanooga has made it into the #1 spot on a list like this. Last year it was top middle-minded city in the U.S. See, the southern part of the United States consistently ranks high on these kinds of questions. Every one of last year's lists of the top 10 Bible-minded cities were in the South. 2 other Tennessee cities, Tri-Cities and Knoxville, also made it into the top 10. Why is this happening? Well, it may just be because the more rural a community is, the more normal it is. The big cities, the politically liberal states, the traditionally religious neutral states like in the West, the mountain states, And then, of course, there's California that doesn't correspond to any other state, Washington State, and to some degree, Oregon. What are these states producing? Well, they're producing big cities. Big cities tend to be more liberal, largely due to the anonymity they create. People can do whatever they want in a big city, and their family, their friends would never know. I drove down a street in New York City, very near 42nd Street. It was one of the side streets. And I watched what appeared to be a 10-year-old boy go into a door next to a bar. Now, if you've been in the city and you go into that door, it probably went down or it went up. It could have been to an apartment. It could have been down to another. I don't know what it was. There were no lights on. 10 years old, 11 o'clock at night. What's this boy doing out? And if he is doing something he ought not to be doing, where are his parents? Well, they're probably home or they're working. Do they know where he is? No. That's the big city. Opportunities abound. In the country, he wouldn't get away with that. The neighbors would rat on him, call his mom. He'd have to go home. In the city, we don't even know where he is. You can do whatever you want. Nobody will ever find out. Add to that now the idea of air conditioning and television and internet and personal communication devices, and we are increasingly alone. In warmer climates with the tradition of neighborliness, it's a little bit different. There's a lesson here, a biblical lesson, Genesis chapter 11, chapter 12. The descendants of Cain were the ones that first began to build cities. You do know cities are not really what God was about. God's program was more rural and thereby family oriented. Can you say the Tower of Babel? In a bid for world domination, Turkish President Erdogan is deliberately flooding Europe with Muslims in order to Islamicize the continent. That, according to Moshe Yaalon, a former defense minister in Israel. Erdogan views Turkey, the political, spiritual descendant of the Ottoman Empire. Early Muslims sought to conquer Europe in the 7th and 8th centuries. They eventually conquered northern Africa, Spain, and most of France, along with the capital city of the Holy Roman Empire, Constantinople. Based on what Erdogan told the Times of Israel, the world seems to be ignoring it. But it is very, very deliberate. In a far-reaching interview, the former minister and ex-IDF chief of staff in Israel also addressed Donald Trump's initiative to broker an Israeli-Palestinian peace, urging the U.S. president to not even try to reach a final status agreement between the two sides. Today, 3 different streams of Islamic extremism aspire to global hegemony, said Yaalon. Iranian Shiite Islam, the Sunni Islamic Caliphate, and the Muslim Brotherhood led by Erdogan. The Turkish president has for years allowed known jihadists from across the world to come to Syria from Iraq, returning to their own countries as skilled fighters. They're being pushed into Europe, according to Yaalon. The authorities in Athens gave Turkish intelligence a list of 1,224 Turks who were being smuggled into Europe. But Turkey just denies the whole thing. Former Chief of Staff for Israel, Moshe Yaalon, maintains that Erdogan is acting like a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, and he wants to Islamicize Europe. Does anybody doubt that? He went on to say, so when the Europeans demand that Erdogan stop this stream of refugees, what did he ask of them? He asked of them, of the EU, to allow Turks into Europe without visas. And what did he tell Turks living in Europe just 3 weeks ago? He told them to increase their birth rates. This is the Islamization of Europe. Can America be far behind? The Canadian government may legally remove children from families that refuse to accept their child's chosen gender identity, thanks to a new legislation passed by the Ontario province. It's Bill 89, entitled Supporting Children, Youth and Families Act 2017. It was approved on June 1st by a vote of 63 to 23. The Minister of Children and Youth Services, Michael Coteau, it's a French word, I guess that's how it's pronounced, who introduced the bill, said earlier this year that a parent's failure to recognize and support a child's gender self-identification is a form of child abuse. And a child in that circumstance should be removed from the situation and placed into protection. He said, I would consider this a form of abuse. When a child identifies one way, the caregiver says no. If it's abuse, and if it's within the definition, the child can be removed from that environment, placed into protection where the abuse stops. Abuse in this case is defined as insisting on treating a child in harmony with his or her DNA and physical attributes as opposed to what they feel. The science is there. This is corporate insanity. The studies are there. The medical community is there. What's not there is public opinion, and the opinion of those in and out of the scientific community who care more about feelings than reality. I think they care more about crafting a new society. This bill replaces the Child and Family Services Act, which govern child protection, foster care, and adoption services. Whether it's gender identity or gender expression, they're both included as important factors in this determination. Child protection agents, adoption service providers, and judges are now required to take into account and respect the child's race, ancestry, place of origin, color, ethnic origin, citizenship, family, diversity, disability, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. They're children. The former law stated that parents of a child in care has the right to direct the child's education and religious upbringing. The new law, no. It's where we're headed, folks. In 2009, Congress passed the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, allowing all states to waive the work requirements for food stamp enrollment. This expansion of waivers saw the rate of non-working poor receiving benefits rise from 1.9 million to almost 4 million by fiscal year 2010, 4.9 by fiscal year 2013. But now comes a fresh breeze of conservatism from Washington, and participation in the food stamp program has plunged by 85% in 13 counties in Alabama and in 80% in Maine. In Alabama, enrollment in food stamps dropped over 4 months from 5,538 able-bodied adults without dependents to just 831. Statewide, a total of 13,663 able-bodied adults without children or other dependents were enrolled in food stamp programs before the change was implemented January 1st. As of May 1st, that statewide number had dropped to 7,483. In Maine, the Daily Signal in Maine and Maine's Governor Paul LePage, a Republican, enforced work requirements for food stamp recipients beginning December 2014. Within 3 months, the number of those on food stamps who were able-bodied adults without dependents declined from 13,300 to 2,678. Caseworkers in Maine attribute the huge decrease in enrollment to many recipients choosing to go without benefits rather than work. And you say maybe they couldn't find work. That's a possibility. Maybe they weren't able to work. No, these are just people who are able to work. Well, what was expected of them? That they would perform a minimum of 6 hours a week of community service or other aspects of the work requirements. 6 hours a week, and they said no. They would rather not work than get the money. Experts indicate that if the federal government establishes and enforces similar work requirements nationwide, total food stamp enrollment would, over time, plummet, saving you and me, the taxpayer, an estimated $10 billion with a B dollars every year, or as much as $100 billion over the next 10 years, which is the way the government factors these things. That's the conclusion of Robert Rector, a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation who specializes in poverty and welfare programs. Can you hear the howls of liberals and those who are used to a free ride? Yeah. That's what's been happening while you were busy just last week. Welcome to a brave new world.